Now I need to create a view for my view component. Since I plan on using this view component from my layout page, that means this view component could be used from anywhere, any page in the application. So I'm going to create the view for this view component in the shared folder. So view components have a very specific convention by default on how to locate views. What I need to do inside of this folder is add another folder called components. And then inside of components, I need a folder that matches my view component name. So inside of components, I want to add another folder, and this is going to be called restaurant count. So I don't need the words view component on the end here, but I do need the folder name to match the first part of the view component name. If you've used ASP.NET MVC, the Model View Controller Framework, this is very similar to how the framework finds a view for a specific controller. So now inside of this folder, I can place one or more views that are dedicated to my view component. If I'm not specifying the specific name of a view here, like now I want to render the count view and pass along the count model. If I'm not specifying the name of a view here, the name of my view will be default. So coming back into the folder, I want to right click and say that I want to add. And now instead of going through Razor Page, let's go to new item. What I want to find here is just a regular Razor view. Basically, I just want a CSHTML file. I don't want a page model or a CS file behind this. And I did want to name this. I wanted to give this the name default.cshtml. I should have done that before creating it, but I'll simply rename it here. So now I have a view file. Let's erase everything that is in here. Set up my model. What do I expect my view component to pass to me? As a model, I expect an integer. And once again, I will have access to an @model property that will allow me to use and present that information. Let's create a div, perhaps with some bootstrap styling to make this appear in a well. And I'm going to close the div tag, fighting with Visual Studio here just a bit. And let's say there are @model restaurants here. And perhaps we could even include a link. So include a link to /restaurants/list and display the text, see them all. So now I have my view component class that uses the restaurant data service to build a model, which is count. And we tell the ASP.NET Core framework we want to render the default view using this model, the count. ASP.NET Core should find this view. When it executes this view, it'll receive just this snippet of HTML. And now it's up to me to pick the location where I want this rendered. For rendering, it turns out that I can use a special tag helper to render this view component. But first, I'll have to do what we talked about earlier, which is to go into my view imports file and say that I want to register some tag helpers from this assembly. So from my Ode to Food project, and I'm telling ASP.NET Core, load up that assembly and include all the tag helpers that you find. What that will allow me to do is come into the view or the page wherever I want to use this view component, and I'm going to place this into the layout page since we have to show this on every page. And let's go to the bottom, let's say inside of the footer, and I'm going to use a tag helper, VC:, and then include the name of my view component. So a couple things here. First of all, this is the name of the view component without the two words view component at the end, so it's just restaurant count. And it's also what we would call kebab cased. So instead of using an uppercase C here, if you have uppercase letters in your view component name, replace those with lowercase letters and put a dash in front. I don't have to do that with the first letter, but restaurant-count, all lowercase, will tell this tag helper go out and find a view component named restaurant count, execute this code, and place the HTML that it produces right here. Now what if you have a view component that requires parameters? Perhaps I have a view component that's going to display the current weather. So one of the parameters that you have to pass in is the zip code. Well, I can ask for a parameter here using invoke, and then I can actually pass that parameter by name as part of this tag helper. So zip code or postal code, and set that value and pass it in. With restaurant count, we don't need any parameters, but I'm going to save all my files. We're going to refresh the list page, and hopefully down here at the bottom of the page, I can now see the message. There are 3 restaurants here, see them all. And that does seem to work. And that should appear on every page. So even the About page, which has nothing to do with restaurants, Since this view component can go out and do its own data access and build whatever model it needs, I can use this view component from anywhere. And just to summarize, that's the primary difference between a view component and a partial view. A partial view always depends on model information coming from its parent view. A view component can be completely independent.